Hello. I'll wait for a few people to roll in here. Welcome this evening. Give a chance for people to start clicking in and we'll get started here shortly. All right, there we go. Well, welcome. Glad you're all here. My name is 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚𝙚. I lead Minnesota Crossroads Career Network, and I'm glad you're here for our webinar tonight. I want to welcome you. We have a great lineup of things. You're here to see primarily 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚𝙚 talk about determining culture fit in your job search, and really looking forward to have him share some great information that I know will be worthwhile for all of you. Just want to welcome you to Crossroads and encourage you to take advantage of all the different things we offer. And at the end of the Dave's presentation today, I'll kind of run through a number of things that you can get plugged into so that you can get more help in your job search and more input and encouragement and hope so that you get through it successfully. It can be an emotional roller coaster. I'll talk more about that in a moment here, but it's a great way for you to be able to get plugged in and not have to go it alone. I think sometimes the isolation of a job search is one of the toughest things, and Crossroads offers a number of ways where you can help alleviate that. So part of the hope with Crossroads is that along with helping people succeed in their job search, we also talk about bigger issues and point people to the hope and encouragement of Jesus Christ. In that light, we want to take a look at what the Bible actually says about life. You know, for just about all of us, a job search is an emotional roller coaster and can be a punch in the gut when it comes to our self-confidence. We may not say it out loud to anyone else, but it's natural that when a new job doesn't pop up quickly, that we start wondering about our worth in the marketplace, whether we really have the needed skills and experience or not, or whether we can really compete with others for the jobs we want, whether we really measure up. Those doubts can come across in our networking and interviews and make things much more difficult at times. Now, similarly, many people think that their life has to measure up to a certain standard in order to be in a right relationship with God. Deep down, we know our lives are far from perfect. We've all done things and said things we regret, and know we've done things that are not how we're supposed to live. Always working to be better and not knowing how good is good enough can really shake your confidence in where you stand with God. The good news is that being in a relationship with God is not about getting your life right first. What the Bible actually says is that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. It doesn't say that you have to live a life that's good enough to be saved. It says we need to put our trust in who Christ is and what he did for us. Then will have a right relationship with God. God does want us to live a better life. And when we put our trust in him, day by day, he gradually changes our desires from within so that we become more like him as we go on with our lives. When we know that our relationship with him is secure because we trust him and him alone for our future, then we can have more confidence about who we are in every area of our life, including your job search. The job search becomes, you put it in better perspective, and it becomes a smaller issue than your eternity. My hope is that by gaining the right perspective of a relationship with God, it can help your job search as well. Let me open up in a word of prayer, and then I'll introduce a short video followed by our main presentation with 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚𝙚. Lord, we thank you that we can come together this evening and be able to, even though it's just virtual and we're not seeing each other, we can share some great information. We pray that you help everyone get what they need today. Help with their job search, giving them hope, encouragement, boldness, or greater trust in you. Father, we know that ultimately all good things come from you alone, and that when we look to you for those blessings in life, that it is our best shot at getting what we really desire. Thank you, Lord, for all these things, and we pray that this time tonight honors you. In Jesus' name, amen. So with that, let me share a short video here. It's with Jonathan Evans, and you may not know him. He's played for multiple NFL teams, or that was the plan. He'll describe it here for you. But sometimes God has a different plan for our lives, and get us where we thought we're going, but different from what we thought it was going to look like. So that's certainly true in our careers in many ways. Let me get this going here and catch you on the back end.
Winning. It's kind of what I had gotten used to from a very young age. I looked at life from an optimistic perspective, and so I thought that life, even when it has challenges, is just an opportunity to go win. And it didn't matter what anybody else thought. It didn't matter what anybody else said, no matter how close they were to me. I knew where I wanted to go. I knew where I wanted to be. And I knew what my outcome should be. And when it all comes crashing down, sometimes you just don't know what to do. You know, I've been an athlete my whole life since I was a little kid. I just loved it. I wanted to be like Mike, like everybody else at the time. I wanted to make sure that I shined. And so I tried to make a way, even when there was no way. I tried to practice and put in the work and do all of the things necessary because I thought that's where I would find my value and ultimately find myself. I was winning in my football career in high school, state champion, did well enough to get a full scholarship to Baylor University. Was able to play my 4 years there and then get picked up by the Dallas Cowboys in 2005. And every kid's dream who loves sports is to play at the highest level, and here I was, standing in the locker room with a star in the middle of it. I was excited to step into this new atmosphere and prove myself, make my own way. Running out of the tunnel, experiencing the lights, the camera, the action, the fire, the planes flying over the stadiums. That wouldn't happen. To say the least, it was a struggle. I got released from the Dallas Cowboys in training camp, and I got sent over to NFL Europe, to the developmental league. I just wanted to play. I wanted to be in the NFL. I had worked hard to be there, and here I am going to Berlin, Germany, to play overseas, be totally away from my family in a different country. Things just weren't working out. I wanted to come home. The head coach let me know that I had to do exit interviews, and exit interviews would take a couple of days. And I called my dad and I said, I can't come home on the flight that you booked. And my dad said, son, I think it's odd that you can't come home when you want to come home. I think it's just a little odd that you can't move the way that you want to move. I think you need to pray and ask God, why does he have you here? And does he want you to be here? And if he wants you to be here, I think he'll show you. And I'll never forget being on the field, praying to God and saying, okay, I'm at my wit's end. I'm at a low point in my career. If you want me to be here, you're gonna have to let me know some kind of way. And I prayed that prayer and put my hand into the dirt. And as soon as my hand touched the dirt, somehow, some way, God gave me a peace that surpasses all understanding. It was at a moment where he told me literally, this is where I want you to be. This is why you have this peace. And I looked at the head coach who I just told that I was leaving, and I told him that I'm staying. He looked at me wondering what just happened, but it was just a revelation where God was telling me that you've been doing this for you all this time, and now you're gonna do it for me. I ended up counseling a lot of guys in my room, teaching them God's word and putting them in position to succeed in their marriages. I mean, they were asking me all types of questions. 7 players ended up accepting Christ overseas, and I realized that's why God has me here. That's why I play this game. And so I thought to myself, I know what to do now. When I go back to the NFL, I know how I can make the team. I know now how I can run out of the tunnel, how I can have my dreams. As long as I teach people about God, God is gonna let me play. I went back to the NFL with the Tennessee Titans. I ended up getting carted off the field in a preseason game against the New England Patriots. Now I'm at home, I'm rehabbing, and I'm out of the NFL. I get called again to go to the Buffalo Bills. I know what to do. Just go back, tell people about God, and I'll get to run out of the tunnel. I do it. I get cut again. I'm at home, a man with no job, with nothing going on, sitting around hoping that someone would give me a call. Living in a state of anxiety and worry about when the next call would come or if the next call would come. And I thought that it was over. Suddenly my phone rang and I got a call from 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚 with the Washington Commanders for what was called the Washington Redskins at the time. And he said, come play for me. I can't tell you how excited I was to hear those words. I started working out and I went back. I got on the practice squad, played for a little while, was leading guys in the locker room, doing what I thought I should do. And they cut me anyway. And I said, God, why would you bring me here just to drop me? Why would you take me up just to let me down? I told my wife, Kanika, God still got something for me. I have to pave a way. And the whole time she's telling me, I think he's trying to turn your attention to something else. And I'm not listening because I know football is what I'm supposed to do. It's what I've always done. I kept going up and going down, thinking I'm gonna win and coming out a loser. And this time, I knew it was over. I'm almost 30 years old and nobody's gonna pick me up now. And I got another call. The Kansas City Chiefs called me. A big smile hit my face. I'm like, this time is gonna be the time. I go out, I start my workouts. I'm excited to get back in shape. And as I was working out, I tore my Achilles tendon. I'm on the ground. I remember guys coming over on the field. They're like, what happened? I said, I tore my Achilles. And they said, I see you crying, but I see you laughing. Like, what's going on? I said, I guess God had to take me this low to get my attention. It was loud and clear that I knew now he was trying to change my direction and I was just being stubborn. He had a plan for my life, and I never wanted to accept doing anything that my father and my mother did. I wanted to pave my own way, and I used sports as my scapegoat. Just like Jacob limped for the rest of his life, I limped into Dallas Theological Seminary with a boot on and crutches, and I started the path to what God wanted me to do. Maybe 5 months in to accepting my call to ministry, where I got a call to come back to the NFL. You wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't accept me whole, but now they would accept me injured. And guess what the team was? The Dallas Cowboys. I was standing in the tunnel, about to run out on the field with the Dallas Cowboys. I remember picking up my cell phone and calling my dad. And I said, Dad, we made it. I'm about to run out of the tunnel. He said, amen, son. Amen. Now the question is, why do I have my cell phone in the tunnel? Because this time I wouldn't run out as the player. I would actually limp out as the chaplain. God had taken all of that chaos and my lowest points and took me into seminary. Not because he wanted to take me out of the NFL, but because he wanted to put me in it. He just wanted me to be in it his way, not my way. I was used to winning, and I had to learn how to lose in order to become a winner again. And from all of my struggles, all of my pain, there's nothing a player can say to me that I haven't experienced myself. And that's when I realized that God will use your greatest misery when he takes you to your greatest ministry. That he never wastes anything. I'm Jonathan Evans, and I am second.
There we go. You know, certainly not everybody is geared or intended to go to ministry, but sometimes God's got other plans than what we think we have. And trying to figure that out can be tough sometimes, but often it's, we're often supposed to thrive where we're planted as well. And trying to, as we build a relationship with God and listen carefully, you can figure those things out. With that, I'm really glad to be able to introduce Dave Sparkman. That's what you've all come for. And Dave is a good personal friend. We've served through Crossroads together for many years together. He currently is the executive director for Crossroads Career nationally. But when it comes to culture, he definitely knows what he speaks of. He used to be the chief culture officer for United Health Group, a little company over in Minnetonka. And he was engaged in a long-term plan to change the culture in that organization and learned an awful lot in the process. And a lot that's going to be very insightful, I hope, for you as you are trying to figure out what's a good culture and how do you figure that out in the companies you're pursuing. So with that, Dave, glad to have you join us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Super. Thank you so much, Harry, and thank you everyone for joining this evening. Wow, what a powerful video that was. And I had not heard of Jonathan before, and what a cool way how he saw God work in his life to bring him to where he was supposed to be, but in a very different path. And I really appreciated what he said, where many times God takes us to a point that we don't think we should be at in order to take us to a place where he wants us to be, which basically is why I'm here tonight. I used to be a partner at a firm called Arthur Andersen, and we hit a little bump years ago called Enron, and kaboom, my whole career went up in smoke, and everything that I thought was where God had wanted me and planned for me to be a minister to that mission field of Arthur Andersen, completely changed. And I became unemployed for the first time in my career. And I certainly learned quite a bit through that process. Number one, it's not nearly as much fun to be on the other side of the desk interviewing for a job as it is to be the interviewer. And also just the days, nights of unreturned phone calls, the rejection, the ups and downs of the chase, the search, wondering what is going to happen. And also just seeking God, what are you trying to teach me and tell me? And so here we are years later, and I have a passion for Crossroads Career and trying to support people in transition in any way that I possibly can, because just like Harry, we've been there. And I really appreciate his counsel to all of you, never to go through this alone, because when you go through it alone, that is not where you're the most fit. That is where the enemy wants you to be, is isolated and alone. And so to join in any community, and we're appreciative that you joined Crossroads Career tonight, so that we can try to assist you in some way as you go forward. So to dive right in, and we're going to have plenty of time for some Q&A in case I don't hit something that's on your mind. I've got about 20 slides to take you through, and talking about what exactly does it mean when someone says cultural fit. And you may have been, it's not hard to think about something that fits. I mean, as you look at these different visuals on the slide, you can see, for example, the maroon umbrella doesn't fit with the dark colored ones. You see a picture of a puzzle, and there's pieces that fit in certain areas or another. The one that's especially close to my heart right now is the one in the center lower area, where the yellow block does not quite make it through the red circle. I have a 1.5-year-old granddaughter who's now at that stage of trying to shove little shapes in and turning around and giving me that little perplexed look like, why doesn't this work? Well, it's because it doesn't fit. And we know that very intuitively, intellectually, it's fairly simple to see, but yet when we're in a job search and we're trying to figure out something that is not nearly as clearly defined as these visuals that you see, it can be quite perplexing. Many of you may have heard the words, I'm sorry, but you're just not the right fit. And maybe the question in your mind is what's on the screen. What in the world are they really saying? What does that mean? Or perhaps you've landed a job and then you discover that the company, the boss, the team are just not the right fit at all for you. Earlier in my career, I landed at a job, and the owner, it was a smaller privately held company. The owner and I could tell right away we were very different from each other. And at first you think, oh, opposites attract. And then later on you discover oil and water do not work together. And it was not destined to be something where we were going to complement each other as much as we were then in conflict with one another, particularly around some of the things philosophically as to where the business was going to go and how the business would operate. That was clearly not a cultural fit for me. So it's fine then if we recognize that there's a cultural fit aspect that we need to do, but how do you figure that out? Is there a secret, super secret question, that you should ask, or is there some type of process that you should go through to determine if the organization is the right fit for you? And like most things in life, there is not a super secret question and answer. There is not a silver bullet, so to speak, to give you the answer. But there is a process that I've put together that I think might be useful to you. And certainly when I think of myself going through an interview process, as well as being the interviewer on the other side of the fence, what am I looking for? And how might I perceive a candidate that's going through and asking me some of the questions that they're asking? And so that's what formed the conversation for this evening. The important thing to remember is that the cultural fit goes both ways. It's not simply something that you're looking to see in the organization, what flashpoints there might be that alert you or give you a warning as to something that you should not consider. But it's also getting to understand and know yourself a lot better. But even before we jump into that, we've been talking about cultural fit, and I am big into definitions. What exactly are we talking about when we talk about culture? And there's a variety of definitions. I'm going to put several on the screen. My favorite is the one on the bottom. It's just the way we do things around here. So even if you had thought that you had found the super secret question to ask, hey, can I see your cultural handbook? Can I see something that documents the way you do things around here? There is no document that any organization has that they could give you that will outline every single thing that happens within an organization. They can tell you their mission, they can tell you their vision, they can tell you their values. That's going to get them a lot closer. But when you start to amplify or go through the exponential outcomes of tens of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people every day making decisions. I heard an incredible statistic, don't quote me on this one, but we make 20,000 decisions in an hour. I mean, I'm not sure how that calculation comes to bear, but our brains are constantly thinking, and what we think, we then do. And that doing, the behaviors that we exhibit, gives us outcomes. And if we find an outcome that works and the organization applauds or rewards that outcome, well, guess what? We're going to keep repeating that as best we can to get rewarded. Yes, it is Pavlovian, and we do learn through that. So the culture, very, very important. It is fairly amorphous. It's hard to define, and you'll find that every company defines it a little bit different. One question you could ask a company, an organization, is how do they define culture? And you'll get some fairly interesting answers. So once you define culture and you're trying to figure out what the fit is, let's think about the process that you've entered into. You're trying to match what you do best to what the organization needs most. Now, just that short description of the recruiting process is flawed in so many different ways when you step back and think about it logically. For those of you who have been hiring managers, if I asked you how you created the job description that you're going to publish all over the planet through the internet to get applicants to apply for this job, if you're honest, most people would say, well, I go to other job descriptions and I cut, paste, and assemble. You're a good CPA, and you put it together and then you push it out there. Putting a job description together is not exactly the top of the list for most managers. They're trying to get the job done that they were hired to do. They now have a gap in their team. They're usually time crunched. Things are not happening the way they want it to, and they're just hoping beyond hope that if they can find just one candidate that fits, if they can find them very quickly, they'll get it done. And they, most of the time, rely on the interview process, thinking that they will get the right applicant and find the right person. So they don't spend the time on the job description. Now let's look at the candidate. If I asked you, how many of you have altered or changed your resume to try to match what this mysterious job description describes? Most people would say, yeah, of course I have. In fact, I've been counseled to do that by good recruiters. In fact, even Crossroads Career would say, match it up to the job description. And that's all true. However, does that diminish who you are and what you're bringing to the organization? I would suggest that through this process, and again, through anxiety, stress that you go through as a candidate, you're trying to get the easiest and best path that there is into an organization that will hire you. So you're not really thinking necessarily about putting your best foot forward about who you are so that the organization can clearly see you as that piece of the puzzle. Once again, thinking, oh, the interview process will allow this to happen. So I would simply suggest the process is very flawed. It is what it is, and you've got to navigate that. And that's one more thing that makes the complexity of cultural fit so difficult. Because if you don't alter your resume in order to fit that job description, then the mystical black box will throw you out. You won't get through the ATS system, the applicant tracking system, to get to the interview process. So now there's ways to do that. There's resources on our Crossroads Career website that can help you look at your resume in a different light, particularly from a unique distinctions perspective about what you're bringing to the table. There's aspects about job descriptions. All of those things are resources that we have at Crossroads that can help you get a better and more insightful view of the process. We're not going to take the time to go through that all tonight. I just wanted to give you the context for the environment in which you're looking for this cultural fit. So most people think, well, of the two sides of the equation, certainly I know myself pretty well. After all, I've lived with myself all my life. However, just looking at this screen, how many of you could articulate those 14 things that I've got listed out on the left? If I asked you just what your core values are, how would you describe your abilities? What goals do you have? What dreams are out there? Most of us, including myself, by the way, I am not, I am very fallible on this. I don't think I could necessarily talk about all of my distinctives or passions or my personality. And this is, again, a case where if you go through Crossroads step number 3 and looking at aptitudes and getting other people's feedback, many times they can see you better than you see yourself. We could do a whole presentation just on these 14 areas, but we're not going to spend the time on this because I think most of you have probably showed up thinking there's got to be a way for me to examine the organization that I'm applying to try to understand their culture better in order to get myself engaged to see if that's a fit. However, I just encourage you, take some time, take a look at this and get to know yourself. Give yourself some freedom to know what your life purpose is, your core values, etc. We have a workbook entitled Hear God Calling You. And there's exercises and we think a very self-help way, or you can get into an online group to that degree to help you arrive at some of these conclusions. So the big questions, how can I get to know more about the organization to figure out if I'm going to like it? And I would suggest that's not the question to ask. The question to ask is, how do I get to know more about the organization to know if I'm going to fit? And if you take it up a level, how can I get to know more to figure out if I'm going to be able to contribute there and contribute successfully? Going back to knowing yourself, is your style, are your values going to match that organization's values? Are the organization's values simply words in a binder or on the wall, or are they actually lived out into the organization? All of those things are things you're going to need to figure out. And it's fairly difficult. Peter Drucker once famously said, culture eats strategy for lunch. He didn't add that job candidates may also be on the menu, but it happens all the time. I saw us at United Health Group hire literally hundreds of highly intelligent, highly successful executives, and then they failed within the environment or the culture at United Health Group. Now, where's the accountability for that? I'd suggest it's on both sides, because to be a fit, both sides have got to work together to figure that out. We were seeing that happen so much that our CEO at the time, 𝘿𝙬𝙪𝙩𝙚, decided that he wanted to invest in figuring out our united culture and being able to articulate it very clearly. And that's where, as Harry mentioned, I was able to serve in the role of Chief Culture Officer for a number of years as we worked to get our core values into every single thing we did within United Health Group. So every organization goes about it a little bit differently. It is a fairly ambiguous topic, which means it's fairly difficult to navigate. Just to encourage or discourage you even further, culture is not a dating app. My youngest daughter is 28 years old, and she is engaged in some dating apps. And one time she involved the family. This was about a year ago, or a year and a half ago over Christmas, and she flashed it up on the screen, and we saw different guys' pictures shows up, and the guy's picture would show up, and she'd say nope, without even reading anything about the guy. I'm like, well, and I get it. I mean, you need to take a look at their photo and the looks, but it just became, it was amazing to me how little time that she spent trying to just see where she felt that there might be a match with this future young man. So she's still looking. So if any of you know a nice, attractive young man, as she calls a Jesus-loving Tarzan, please let me know. But the dating app, even if she had found the right guy, you still have to have conversations. You have to get to know them. You still have to do the work. There is nothing that can just automatically answer that question. If you think about your entrance to an organization, the way you think about a personal relationship, you realize just how tricky that can be. Now, here's some more challenges. The organization may not know itself very well at all. Prior to us defining our united culture at United Health Group, if you had asked any of us what the culture was at United Health Group, you would have gotten as many different answers as there are individuals that you asked, because we didn't have a solid definition. We changed that. Even then, you then have to figure out, is it being lived out? You also have to consider that human beings all hiring managers are human beings, and they have blind spots and weaknesses just like all of us. They may not be good interviewers. You know, you're trying to get into the job and you think, man, I match everything lines up. I've done all the search to see if I can match the culture, but I can't get through the hiring manager or the HR recruiter. Well, that person may not be asking you the questions you wish they would ask. I already mentioned opposites may attract, but an organization has many angles to consider. You get into a large organization particularly, and you look at the matrix of how things actually work. It's not as simple as a direct relationship with a supervisor. My oldest daughter took a job about a year ago, and 3 days after she started, her hiring manager changed, her supervisor changed. She never had met the new supervisor through the recruiting process. Thankfully, the person turned out to be a good person with whom she could connect, but just think what a disaster that could be through an organizational restructure. So all sorts of things can happen. In the midst of all that, I've tried to put together 8 practical steps you can use to decipher whether you might be a good fit, at least going through a due process so that you can start to literally check the box to say, am I doing these things? Have I done these things to at least, as well as you possibly can do, assure yourself of a good cultural fit with an organization? The first step, as you can imagine, with Crossroads Career is just have a conversation with the Lord about the decision. You may get some supernatural insights, as we saw with Jonathan Evans. He may want you to go somewhere you don't necessarily want to go, or maybe it's not in the way you thought you should go, right? And I chose this word about talking with the Lord rather than just praying about it, because I think it needs to be an exchange. And if all you're doing is repeating words and not giving yourself some time to hear from the Lord about what he may be saying and prompting to you, I just encourage you to spend a little more time with him. And that begins with spending time in his word. There are so many things that we can learn from scriptures. And yes, I recognize that it doesn't say go to work at Target or go to work at United Health Group within those scriptures, but you're going to start to get things that help you understand yourself better, who you could be or are in Christ Jesus. And as Harry mentioned in the introductory remarks, that gives you that much more confidence as you go through the process. So clue number one, step number one, spend some time in prayer and have some conversation with God about your decision. He will give you openings and insights to that regard. Clue number two is compare core values. Of course, first of all, you have to know your own, and including how you define those core values. And then you look at the organizations, and some websites, it's still a challenge to find their core values. Even when you find them, is what is stated really what is practiced? Are those actual core values that are used to shape how they do business, or are they aspirational, or are they just fiction? When we were putting together the core values for United Health Group, our CEO told us that we had complete license to just start from scratch. We didn't have to begin with what was already in place. None of us even knew what the core values were for the overall organization. We were all so attached to our segment's core values, we didn't know what United Health Group's organizational core values were. As we were putting them together, it was pretty clear that some of those values that we thought should exist were values that we already possessed. Performance became one of our 5 core values. And for those of you who know United Health Group, financial performance particularly was very high on the list of what the company has been able to accomplish. But when we came to the words compassion or relationships, we had to look at each other and say, those are definitely aspirational values. And our CEO agreed. They became 2 more of the 5 that we put into practice. And we tried to be very clear as we rolled out the values to our employees that this is not what we think we are today. They are aspirational. And we need to change a number of things, a large number of things, to have all of our systems and processes match up with the compassion and the relational value. So one of the questions you could ask is, what are your core values? Even if you know them, ask the manager, see if they know them. Ask how they define it, ask how they use it. And of course, not in a way where you're trying to say, aha, gotcha, but you're just trying to understand, how are they implemented? How do the values show up in what they do? And that'll start to give you a clue as to how those align with your own personal core values. Number 3, listen to other people. Check out what others have to say. The Vault and Glassdoor will provide some insights. As with everything on the internet, you have to take it with a grain of salt. It isn't the gospel, but it gives you some ideas of what others have to say about the organization. You may just Google the organization and see what shows up. It's amazing what can show up when you put something into Google and see where it may lead you. A lot of people think they've done their homework just by looking at the company website. You definitely should do that, but I would encourage you to expand your search to see what others have to say. And that includes your network. Those casual conversations, but yet they need to be very intentional, deliberate, can yield quite a bit of fruit. And a lot of people are not real anxious, positive or excited about networking. I'd encourage you, if you haven't read this book, to check out a book by Marsha Ballinger and Tony Perez called The 20-Minute Networking Meeting. It is, to me, the gospel of networking. If you read that, I think you'll be encouraged by how straightforward and plain it is but yet how direct they coach you to be with getting things from the network. Now, many of you may think, well, okay, even if I get that book and I understand how to network, I still feel very awkward in asking people that I don't know for information. And I would just encourage you that by going through the process, getting references from other people and meeting those new people, some of those people will turn out to be your best friends. There are people that I met through my job search over 20 years ago coming into United Health Group that are still my friends today that I didn't even know before I started the process. One of the things I always try to tell people about networking is you're going to get help from people that you'd never expected, and the people from whom you expect help, you may not get it. The answer, simply accept whatever help you can get. Everyone has things going on in their lives. They may not feel comfortable for whatever reason helping you at that particular time that you need help. But I encourage you just to keep going, persevere, because the network has by far and away statistically proven to be the best way to get into a company and to land jobs of any other process out there. So we can, of course, do a whole presentation just on networking, how to go about that. Again, there's steps within our Crossroads Career website that can be useful through Minnesota Crossroads that we have presentations on. Number 5, what is permitted and what is promoted, or vice versa? What does a company allow or not allow? The topic of remote work is a hot topic these days. After the pandemic, when everybody went to remote work, and now companies are saying, with whatever logic they've got, why you need to be back in the office. Well, what do they promote and what do they permit? And that's going to start to tell you a little bit about that organization. If you think back to your last employer, what did they permit? Did they permit meetings to always start late? Did meetings always run late? Well, if they permitted that, then that became the culture. And then you're scrambling to get to the next meeting. If you start on time, end on time, you can begin to rely on that particular part of the process, and you'll start to see a pattern exist, going back to our definition of culture, a pattern of behaviors that's repeated time and time again, or it's just the way things work around here. So you're going to learn a lot by asking, and some of these questions can be around the type of work you do. For example, if you're a project manager, you may start to ask them what types of programs do they use to do project management. You may start to ask them, if you're a systems engineer, do they use Agile? Do they use another process? And you're going to get a feel for the culture depending on what you find. The impromptu questions around a supervisor and what how they view success. One of my favorite questions to ask a hiring manager is, after I've been on the job 90 days, for me to have been successful, what needs to have happened? Most hiring managers have not really even thought about it because, again, remember, they cut, paste, and assembled the job description. They haven't really thought through tangibly what it means to be successful. Most hiring managers will think, wow, that's a really good question, and they'll give you a thoughtful answer, something meaningful. You'll start to perceive some of those things that they promote or they permit, okay, regardless of what the website may say. Number 6, compare and contrast very, very broadly. If you like to go to restaurants and you hear the words Chick-fil-A versus Hooters, immediately you're going to have something pop into your mind for both of those organizations. Not bad or good, it's just what pops in our head from branding, from advertising, from maybe personal experience. We will arrive at conclusions about how those organizations operate based on a lot of things that we pick up, the filters that we all have. So now that may change from the facts. I just saw I think an 8-minute video about the Chick-fil-A business model. And they were talking about how much intensive time they spend interviewing and going through a talent process to find their leaders for their stores. They call them operators. And unlike many other food franchises, the operator does not have to put up a lot of money to get their franchise store started. Chick-fil-A corporate actually builds all the stores. They determine where the stores are going to be. It's a very different model than some of the other large food franchises. And then they go through a ton of scrutiny to figure out who should be those operators. The statistic that was thrown out that caught my attention is it's easier for any of us on this call to get into Stanford than it would be for us to be an owner operator at Chick-fil-A. Okay, I don't think my odds are very good at Stanford, so I don't know how well I'd do at Chick-fil-A either. But we are going to have perspectives about the culture when we look at broad comparisons. Well, then you can go to get it even more fine-tuned. You could compare Chick-fil-A versus Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay, now you're in the same arena as to what they serve as far as chicken, still very different approaches as to how they go about their business. Number 7, this is a little bit of a different one, but just like you need to be prepared to give the recruiter or the hiring manager references for you, why should it just be left to the end and to the future employee? Why not turn the tables and say, what references do you have for me? What former employees could you speak to give you assurances or insights as to what it means to work at that particular company? Again, it's through networking. You may talk to vendors. There's all sorts of ways that you can do further investigation using the internet. And I'd encourage you to look at it as an investigative process. It does take work, but that work is worth it, because you may get some odd looks, and you need to time, for example, when you ask for the references. I wouldn't do that until after I have an offer in my hand, but there is a way that you can do it very politely and do it in a manner where that employer knows that you're just going through a due process, because you're trying to ensure to the best of your abilities a cultural fit, which is what the employer wants as well. So if you explain it in the right way and ask it in the right tone, I think you'll be surprised with the answers that you'll get. Last clue, some very direct questions. Tell me about a time when your corporate culture shaped a decision. Many hiring managers, I believe, won't really have a good answer to that. They may be able to describe the second bullet point on corporate culture, and they may actually get a bad fit. But what I found in the work that I did at United, when we were trying to talk about taking our 5 values and fully incorporating them into the way business was done, that had people scratching their heads. What is that? What exactly does that mean? So here's an illustration of what that means. One of our senior executives was in charge of our Medicare space, the consumer advocates that served our members. She had 3,000 consumer advocates under her span of control that she was responsible for. And she decided that she wanted to use the month of February as the month of compassion. And this is about 3 years into our cultural journey of trying to shape our organization around our core values, of which compassion was one. And she put together 5 ideas that she suggested or told the 3,000 consumer advocates that she wanted them to do. One of those 5 things was for each consumer advocate to write 5 handwritten thank you notes to members that they served during that particular month of February. There was no template. There were no words that they had to say. It wasn't a fill in the blank. They had to be an original note. They were supplied paper, pens, stamps, envelopes. She cleared it with HR, communications, marketing. She went through all this process and said, all right, you're going to take time off the phones to write these thank you notes. For those of you who know about a call center, you know that that is a huge risk, because all of your KPIs for a consumer advocate around a call center is around how much time they're on the phone with the member. Also, remember, for an insurance company, when a member calls, it's not usually because they're really happy with what's been going on with their insurance. And when you think about the Medicare space, these are older, elderly people. They may be confused about what's going on. They may not understand the insurance. They've been told something by a provider, a clinic, a doctor that doesn't line up with what the insurance says it's going to cover. They're scared, they're angry, they're confused. It is not a pleasant, happy situation when they call. That's what our Vivian, our senior executive, was saying, but I want you to write him a thank you note for calling. I caught up with Vivian a few months after February, the month of compassion. I asked her how things went. Number one, did you get the 15,000 thank you notes written? And she said, absolutely. We got all 15,000 thank you notes written. And guess what? We have not stopped. So now we've written over 60,000 thank you notes to members all over the United States when they call in. And it's now part of our regular process. We've changed the way we work based on our core value of compassion. And she had said, Dave, I said, well, obviously you're encouraged or you wouldn't continue it. What gave you that encouragement? She said, well, the members, the feedback from the members was just outstanding. We started getting thank you notes back from the members thanking us for the thank you notes. We started getting food baskets and flowers being sent to the call centers to those employees, thanking them for the wonderful notes that they had written. She says, David, it's just amazing what has taken place. And she shared with me one of the thank you notes that had been written. It went something like this. Dear Jerry, thank you so much for the thank you note you sent me. I so appreciated the time that you spent with me on the phone to help me navigate what was happening with my healthcare, as I just did not understand what was taking place. I've never had a thank you note from an organization before, and I certainly appreciate yours and the way you helped me that particular day. Love, Marge. So it can happen. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're going to get a story like that one every time you ask, but if there's nothing that they can tell you about a time when the corporate culture was shaped by the decision, the corporate culture shaped a decision they made, or a process or a system, then you have to start asking yourself, how active are those values? Or maybe they've got principles or some other things that shape what they believe the behaviors should be about the organization. So I'd encourage you, number 8, come up with some direct questions to ask, and I think you'll get some very interesting insights from that. So bottom line, nobody will care about this as much as you do. It's your life. It's worth the work. It is work. It's not an easy answer. There is no silver bullet. It is hard to pin down what that corporate culture is. But if you've been in a corporate culture where you discover that you're not a good fit, it's worth the effort. So I encourage you to go after these 8 steps. These are just suggestions. Again, no guarantees, but it's something that I think will highly increase the odds of you being the cultural fit in the organization that you're talking to. So with that, I'll stop sharing and we'll open it up for Q&A.
Terrific, Dave. Thanks. People can add questions into the chat box and we'll answer all of them or as many as we can get to, but give you a little time here to be able to type in whatever questions or comments you may have, and we'll discuss them. I turn my camera on here as well. Dave, it's interesting. I mean, everything you talked about was, I think, so dead on, and it is about asking a lot of questions. It's interesting to me. Sometimes I hear from people that say, well, the company kind of painted a false picture during the interview process, and it was different from what I found when I got here. But as you talk to them, sometimes you find out that those people also painted a false picture about themselves before they got there. And I think the greatest success you can have in an interview process is when there's a great deal of transparency, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And no place is going to be perfect. It's a
And,
matter of
it's in the
understanding.
process itself is not a natural process that allows the candidate to ask a lot of questions.
Right.
My son, well, this is new news, Harry, it's fresh off the press that my son just accepted a job. Austin,
Oh,
he's a
terrific.
technology guy, and he had spent some time with Harry, and he just accepted an offer. What he told me after he had received the offer, I had, of course, coached him not to say yes and to go through a process that we've outlined as far as how to proceed after receiving an offer. But he made the comment that when he was in the conversation with the hiring manager, he'd only had time to ask one question. And he wasn't holding the hiring manager at fault for that. It was just the natural flow of the interview, and it was all good. But to certainly expect you to say yes or no when you've only had time to ask one question is crazy. So he called the recruiter back and asked if he could spend some more time with the hiring manager. Of course, they said yes. Austin was able to spend 45 minutes with the hiring manager and came back even more impressed with the company, having a better understanding of what he was getting into. So it does take the extra phone call, the extra effort, but it's highly worth it.
You know, that is such a good point. And I think too often people kind of go through the interview process with the, you know, they're asked a question, they answer, they wait for the next question. But the best interviews are a constant dialogue throughout the process. And it's okay to ask questions in the middle of their part of it. You know, is that, you know, they ask you a question, you answer, and then ask an appropriate question back to learn more about the organization. You know, can you tell me more about the team that I'll be working with? Or can you tell me, you know, how the team handles certain issues that come up? And, you know, asking those during the middle of the interview is perfectly fine and valid, and actually probably sets you apart from most other candidates they're talking to.
Yeah, exactly.
We have someone asking, what was the name of the suggested book? Not the 20-minute networking meeting, which she has, but the other one. I don't recall. What other book did you mention?
It may have been around the Hear God Calling You workbook that I mentioned, as you're trying to figure out your life purpose, your calling, your unique distinctions. I think that was the other book I mentioned.
Okay, and that's on the Crossroads Career.
That's on the Crossroads
website.
Career. Yeah.
Go there, and I think there's a menu item at the top for the store, and you'll be able to find it there. Great. Is there a resource for identifying Christian-friendly companies that are more aligned with Christian values? I had this conversation with another person here recently too.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I've not. Harry, have you heard of one? I'm not aware of something that is aggregated just Christian, you know, companies that claim to be Christian. But
yeah, I don't know either. I don't think there is, but I wouldn't put too much weight on that, because any organization is led by and filled with flawed people. I mean, no one is perfect, and they, you know, certainly may have aspirational values which align really well, but you know, often there's good Christian companies that have the best of intentions but create awful cultures as well. And so you really need to figure out, you know, what's a fit for you. You know, that said, you know, there obviously are companies with objectively better cultures than others, but at virtually every company that has a bad culture, there are people there that still love their jobs. And it's really a matter of knowing yourself well and where you'll thrive and succeed, and how you best can interact with others. And, you know, self-awareness goes a long way to creating or figuring out the best culture for you.
well, and in a large organization, you have divisions, segments, teams, departments, and those can vary dramatically from one to the other because, as you mentioned, Harry, each one is led by a different person. And the leader of that group is who's going to set the tone for culture. But all of us have that opportunity to shape culture. There's a phrase, a couple sentences we throw out to get people thinking. It's all organizations have cultures. The only choice is whether you shape it or it shapes you. And if you play with that a while, that's a good long conversation that can open up as you look at those words and how those come together and what a culture is comprised of. And certainly societal culture can impact an organizational culture and vice versa. And that's where your personal values are so important for you to know and feel clear about, because that's what you will be bringing to the table to contribute into that organization.
Someone asked if I could put a link for the Hear God Calling You workbook in the chat, and let me paste that in there right now. Oops. There we go. You can find it right there. Other questions or comments? Be glad to hear from you. And you know, I think everyone is hoping to land in a place where they feel like they can thrive, but sometimes it's hard to figure that out. Stephanie says, I left an employer after multiple changes to my position. It was a situation where the new manager started a week before I started. As similar to what you described happened to your daughter. I love the work, but I was not able to manage the other aspects. It was very stressful. I think, Dave, you talked about job early in your career too, where it just was not a good environment for you, and you were having all kinds of health symptoms come up because of the stress of.
Oh yeah, I was breaking out. I had hives on my arms and chest, and I thought that only happened to crazy people. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm not crazy, but it was happening to me because our brains are funny things, and when you are in a stressful environment, I feel for what you just shared, Stephanie. It's very, very difficult, and it's very frustrating, because particularly if you like the work you're doing, and yet the management and the other parts of the environment cause it to be too stressful to work there. That's very frustrating.
Absolutely. You know, we had it and I lost it. You know, you had mentioned that a lot of times a hiring manager may not be able to describe a situation where their culture mattered, or even what their culture really is, because many companies aren't very deliberate about creating a culture. It just kind of happens. Right. And every company has a culture, but some are deliberately developed, and others just kind of occur. When you're not getting much feedback, what other questions can you ask that help you figure out how things get done there?
Well, that itself is a good question. You know, if you ask them, I mean, many people, even at United Health Group, would, even though we had our United culture defined with our 5 values, they would say, well, we're looking for a culture of innovation, or a culture of diversity, or a culture of performance. I mean, fill in the blank with whatever. And you're going, well, what exactly do you mean? There's a movie, The Princess Bride, and I forget the name of the characters, but this one character keeps saying the word inconceivable in response to everything that happens. And I think it's Montoya. He says, that word you keep using, I do not think it means what you think it means. And so much of it comes into the definitions of what people are talking about. And if you ask them about their culture and they say, well, we're a very innovative culture. Oh, can you describe that for me? What does that look like? What does that mean? And the more that you get them to, and as you said, Harry, get that dialogue going, it's not an interrogation. It's you're earnestly trying to understand, what exactly does that mean? Because you may think of yourself as a very creative, innovative person, or you may not. But depending on what they're saying, you may fit or you may not, depending on how that works. Innovation doesn't just happen in an innovation department. It should be happening everywhere in the company all the time. Otherwise, why are you there if you're not helping create new things to advance the organization? So people get caught up in the little tripwire words that they throw out, thinking that you'll be satisfied and go on. But if you dig in and try to understand, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with where the dialogue can take you.
Someone says, I'm experiencing the multiple changes on steroids now, or multiple changes in her organization, I assume is what she's talking about. Someone else says, I think retention is an important piece, and a number of openings at an employer. At this same company, people were leaving their positions. I was the third person that left a department of less than 10 people in a 6-month period.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the questions I advised my son Austin to ask is, why is this position available? Is this a newly created position, and it was not? Okay, then why is it open? What was the cause for the previous person's departure?
Mhm.
Well, if it may be we had to fire them. Okay, well then what were they not doing that I would want to make sure that I do properly? Or it may be, well, they got a better offer. Okay. I mean, you're going to learn. And that's why I'm just always amazed where people pursue things as candidates and they get the offer and they immediately say yes. And there's just not been the time. It'd be like, someone asks you to marry them and you've met them once. Well, wait a second, let's go through a process here to figure out if we're really going to be a good fit. And that's just having confidence in your own questions and knowing that you haven't lost your mind just because you're unemployed looking for a new job. In fact, many times that gives you a time to find better perspectives than the current people that are working there have. But you got to be confident with that.
Yeah. We've been through an interesting period here the last 3 or 4 years with the pandemic, and it's created a lot of turmoil in the job market, both positives and negatives. And there had been a lot written, in the last 2 years about the Great Resignation, how many people were leaving their jobs and getting new jobs. And that did happen a lot, and it created a lot of turnover in companies. But I also saw multiple polls since then saying that up to 70% of the people that did change jobs felt like it wasn't a good move and they regretted making the change. And more money is a great thing, but it's not the fix all when you're dissatisfied in your career. And a bad jumping from the pot into the frying pan, or however that goes. Or from the frying pan into the fire, there we go, is sometimes not the best answer. Any other comments or questions for Dave? There was locally here in the Twin Cities, Business Incentives Worldwide, BI Worldwide, a company in Edina and things have changed since then, but back in the 90s, multiple years they received the 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚 Award, which was best places to work award that the federal government was giving out. And they were truly a great place to work. And they actually paid below market rates on their salaries. People were underpaid, but they had incredibly low turnover. And as a recruiter, I was always amazed because, we had opportunities for good people there that would have paid much more than they were currently earning, and they wouldn't leave because the culture was great. People felt valued. They felt that they were heard and recognized, and felt that they were, it wasn't a company like Medtronic where you feel like you're saving lives. It was a company that did corporate events. So it wasn't, didn't, on the surface, wasn't deep, meaningful work, but people felt like they had a purpose in their careers. And that's huge. And it's hard, great for companies to retain people that way. Somebody said, we're not the only department with retention challenges. Another department had the manager and 4/5 of their staff leave. I worked closely with this department. The workload was the biggest factor. Something to consider too.
Yep.
Sometimes they're understaffed.
Yeah. Yeah. A great question is, what has turnover been in your department over the last year? And see what they have to say. Tell me about the longevity of the current employees that you have on the team. Well, if everybody is less than 2 years there, there's a lot of questions that we should be asking before we accept anything from an organization. And I just typically see people don't charge in and do it.
Yep. I have a great question here. I have a meeting tomorrow with a person that just left a company that's of interest to me. What would be some good questions to ask them?
So the person just left a company that's of great interest to that person. First one is, why'd you leave?
Right.
And then you could start down the list of cultural questions. You could say, how would you describe the culture of that organization? What do you feel in the description of the corporate culture they did well? What's actual? What's aspirational? What's fiction? Do they walk their talk? What departments are better at the culture than others of what's defined? How did you see the culture affecting the decisions that the CEO made? If you think about, to your point, Harry, the Great Resignation, and we've all seen some horrific stories of layoffs at some fairly large, well-known organizations. How did they lay the people off? That tells you a lot about the culture. And if it was just, I can't remember, actually, I can't remember the name of the company. Was it Better something, where they laid them off? They had a company-wide Zoom, and they told them on the Zoom that 25% of them were going to be laid off. And then they got a memo. I mean, it was just about as cold-hearted as you could possibly imagine. And that will tell you something. The other thing that I would ask that person you're meeting tomorrow is, depending on what caused her to leave, let's say she was a reduction in force and it wasn't her choice, would she go back to that company? How long did she last at that company? Was she there 2 months or 15 years? I mean, just allow yourself to be really curious with people. And most of the time, you just open that door a little bit and they'll charge through and start talking. And if you're a good listener, you're going to glean a lot from that conversation tomorrow. It's a great opportunity you have tomorrow morning.
One caution as well, though, is, and this is often true on Glassdoor and the Vault online resources for trying to discern somebody's corporate culture, is that people don't usually go and write up a comment somewhere just to say they're happy and satisfied in their job. It's usually people that want to vent about something. And so you certainly read those comments that are out there. And if there's a lot of very similar comments from multiple people, then, put more weight on it. But also, if there's a one-off comment of somebody slamming a company, sometimes take that with a grain of salt. It's not necessarily representative, and they may just have had a bad experience, or they may be a complainer themselves. And so you have to be
very
careful.
true.
Don't put too much weight on those things. I'm not seeing any more comments at this point, but appreciate the ones we've gotten and the questions. And I hope it was worthwhile for you. Dave, thanks so much for the, got a quick one here. Is the mission the same as the culture? And I would say no, but go ahead and comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the core values are usually more akin to what the corporate culture is defined as. However, some organizations are so clear with their mission and so firm about what they're trying to do. I think of Medtronic is very clear with their mission and what they're trying to do, and that drives everything they do. So it certainly is a huge contributor to, or can be a huge contributor to the cultural definition.
Great. Well, thanks, Dave. Really appreciate the presentation and the comments, and I hope it was helpful for a number of people. They ask for you guys to hang on. I want to run through a number of things that are available to you through Crossroads, and encourage you to take advantage of the different resources we have and the different ways you can get plugged in and not get isolated, but also to help your job search be more effective and go faster. Let me share my slides here, and I'll run through this pretty quickly for you. There we go. Hopefully you're seeing that. Let me get this. I'm not sure if that's in the way here or not. Anyway, if this is your first time joining us on a webinar, when you signed up for the webinar, we asked for your mailing address, and that was so that we can send you a copy of this devotional, how long, oh Lord, how long, excuse me, I can't say it. And it's devotions for the unemployed and for those who love them. And it's really a tremendous resource with devotionals on everything you may be going through during your job search, everything you're feeling, all the frustrations you have, and getting a different perspective on them. In the back of the devotional, there's an index on different topics, and it's a great way to, when you are struggling with something, to look up what he's got to say on it. 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚𝙚 is the author. He's done presentations for us on Crossroads, and just really grateful that he provides this book and that we can send it to you. So that will be on its way if you haven't received one before, and I hope it's a blessing for you. Everything for Minnesota Crossroads is on our website, mncrossroads.com, and you'll find detailed information about other events that are coming up and how to sign up and how to take advantage of them. We have resources available for you that are on there. We have a job board. We have a lot of local companies that know what we do, know that great people participate and want to find and hire good people. And so we have a job board that they're sending us positions that are targeted towards you. So we're not Indeed.com, so there's not a huge number of positions out there, but keep an eye on it, and new things pop up every week. And so it's a great additional resource for you. On a weekly basis, we have multiple ways you can get plugged in. Every Thursday morning at 9 a.m., we have our Networking with Grace group, and it's focused networking where it's through Zoom meetings, but through a meeting, so you can all see each other, and you can share leads, contacts, get information on companies you're interested in, and get encouragement from others. It's a great way to stay plugged in and get help in your job search to pursue the companies you're interested in. It's led by Wes Tang and Wes Roper. We call them Wes 1 and Wes 2, and they do a fantastic job of making sure everybody walks out with something each week, and keep it encouraging and upbeat. So I have had a number of people tell me it's the best networking they do of any group around the area, and so encourage you to check it out and take advantage of it as often as you can. If you'd like to talk to somebody on a one-to-one coaching basis, check out the website. You can sign up online, and one of our volunteers will respond to you and set up a time for either a phone call or a Zoom meeting or whatever way you want to communicate. And they can help you with whatever you're concerned with in your job search, whether you want somebody to take a look at your resume and offer up any suggestions, if you want help preparing for an interview or do some mock interview practice, help with additional ideas on networking, or just to talk through your situation and get some input and ideas of how you might improve your job search. We have a number of people that volunteer to do that coaching. You can take advantage of it as often as you'd like, and it's a great way to get personal one-on-one help. I am really grateful. We have a team of people that care about you and love to pray for you. And so we have a prayer request page on our website. You can fill in information there. Or if you feel like you really need some more, perhaps ongoing or more personal spiritual and moral support in this process, we have a soul care team as well that somebody will, if you indicate that you're interested in that, somebody will reach out to you, find out your situation, and set up a regular time for you guys to meet and talk. It's a great way to get additional moral and spiritual support through this process and deal with that emotional roller coaster that you go through. The meat and potatoes, though, of everything we offer through Crossroads is really through our online classes. We have small group classes. We have one starting every month, and it's through a Zoom meeting. And we do through the national Crossroads site, we get people from all over the country that join these. I'm actually starting a class this coming Tuesday. So if you are interested in that, go onto the website and send me a note through there that you can still join us for that. But we cover every aspect of a successful job search. We talk about attitude and getting in the right frame of mind. We talk about, we get a chance to take some assessments and to create better self-awareness so we understand ourselves and can articulate who we are and what makes us unique better to potential employers and in networking. We talk a lot about networking throughout this whole thing. If you haven't heard, networking is critical to really finding the job you want. And we talk a lot about how to do that and target companies and make that more effective. We talk about resumes and go through making sure that yours is as effective as it can be in this process. We talk about interviews, how to deal with different situations, how to address different things that come up in an interview, negotiating, selecting, and so much more. And as great as I think the content is, and to give you confidence that you're doing the right things in your job search and to make sure you're being as effective as you can, I think equally important is just that weekly light accountability and encouragement and being in a pool of people that are in the same boat and you can talk about and understand each other in terms of where things are at and that moral support you get from that environment. As I mentioned multiple times, this is an emotional roller coaster. And so getting weekly things into your schedule or on a regular basis that brings you back up to that even keel and in the right frame of mind is critically important. And throughout the 8 weeks, we include talking about God's perspective of your career and your life. And I think that is critical to not just your job, but every aspect of your life. So as I mentioned, new classes start monthly. They're posted on our website. But I am starting one this coming Tuesday, and you can still sign up and join us for that. So encourage you to take advantage of it, whether it's in my group or not, but it's a great way to stay plugged in and get the help you need. If you haven't seen it yet, you should join our LinkedIn group. If you put MN Crossroads Career Network in the search box on LinkedIn, you'll find us. And we have, I think, approaching 2,500 people in there. It might be more than that. I can't remember for sure now. But it's all people that have been through Crossroads and have decided to stay in there after they've landed their job as well, to be networking contacts for others. So you can kind of look through who might be in there at companies that you're interested in pursuing, and they might be a good networking contact for you in those organizations. But all kinds of information gets posted on there. We have recruiters from different companies that post positions and good information for you to know. We have our events that get posted on there and a number of other resources as well. So check it out, become a member of the group, and then stay in it afterwards. It's a great way to give back to others after you've landed and be a help to other people too. All of our webinars, including this one, get posted on our YouTube channel. And so there also, if you put MN Crossroads Career Network in the search box on YouTube, you'll find us. And this webinar will be posted before midday tomorrow. And you can review this one, but also check out the other topics we've had over the last 3 years. And you can view them as often as you'd like. And it's a great way to refresh on some things you may have heard before, or to get some great new information that can be helpful going forward. So check that out and check back there regularly. As an additional resource, Thrivent has just been a great partner to us. They've provided help and resources in a number of different ways. And they do a seminar or webinar series as well, three webinars a month, every month, on financial considerations during job transition. And they talk and give you some great help and pointers on budgeting, on what to do about 401k plans, about your resources and other financial concerns that may come up. And these are not sales presentations. They're really just to help you through this time that might be a challenge to you. So check those out. You can sign up for those at any time, and they're definitely worthwhile to be of help in this process. I just want to acknowledge that nothing that we do, and there's a lot of things obviously we do, but nothing happens because of 1 or 2 people. There's a lot of people involved. We actually have over 40 people that volunteer in one way or another. And I'm grateful for every one of them because it enables us to do a lot of different things and offer help. Nobody's getting paid. Everybody does this because they bring some expertise that they know can be helpful to others and that they have a heart to be of service. And so take advantage of it. If you see some of them, tell them thank you for their time and their commitment. We've got a number of people that have been very committed to this over a number of years, and we have new people that join us regularly, and I'm grateful for every one of them. When we do meet in person, and we hope to still get back to in-person meetings here before too long, we're talking about perhaps in July, we're working some things out. But when we meet in person, we have 3 different locations that we meet at Woodbury Lutheran Church in Woodbury, North Heights Church in Arden Hills, and Grace Church in Eden Prairie, where we got Crossroads started here locally. And if you don't have a church home, I encourage you to check one of them out as well on Sunday mornings. They each stream their services as well as meet in person. And again, I just am a big believer in the value of community and building friends and relationships around you. And at a church in a spiritual environment is the best way to do that. So take advantage of those, and hope to see you at one of those locations. And with that, let me stop here. I hope this evening was worthwhile for you, that you got some great information, and that it encourages you to plug in into other things we offer. And I'm glad you were here, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And our next webinar is coming up next Thursday morning, and we have the topic will be networking, and Anna Shoup is going to be presenting. She's actually going to be joining us from Dallas, and a great presenter. I encourage you to check out the details on the website under our seminars page, and join us next Thursday, unless you find a job before then. And hopefully that's the case for each of you. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.